funded by the Forestry Commission's Forestry Innovation Funds, and is looking to bring more woods into management and improve the quality of woods in management. We're aiming to do 3 things, and that is demonstrate and share innovative tools, such as running different events, whether there's a networking events, demonstration events, or webinars. So this evening is obviously part of that, because we're running a webinar. We run support for other forestry innovators, so we have a group of experts available to assist the development of other tools and ideas that could help stimulate woodland management. And finally, we're working with the Silver Foundation and their online platform, My Forest, to improve the capabilities of the platform. And for those of you that have it or know it, you can now download geospatial maps and take your maps out into your woodlands with you and plot features in real time. Currently, we're working on an improved inventory capability. So if you are taking an inventory within your woodland, this helps to improve the calculations and speed up the process and the time it takes to complete, a good detailed forest inventory for your woodland management plans. And then finally, next year, we'll be looking to develop a timber auctions module, which will help you take your woodlands through the management process, and then also take any products to market at the end of that. So that's what we're doing at the moment. We're running. We've been running for the last 1.5 years, and we've still got another 1.5 years to go to run lots of events and to develop those capabilities. As I mentioned, it's kind of delivered by a group of different businesses and different experts across the forestry sector. So I work for Reheat, who are biomass engineering and forestry consultancy business, and we've partnered with Martin Glynn, RDI Associates, the Silver Foundation, and Timber Auctions to share innovations, to develop innovations, and to bring you speakers like Mike. So we're primarily working in the northeastern Yorkshire area, but webinars allow us to have a wider audience. So, Mike is part of the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust, so a lot of what he says might be slightly localised, but I'm sure is also applicable beyond our boundaries. As we all are facing very similar problems or challenges when managing our woods. So, without further ado, Mike, I will hand over to you to introduce us to plastics and woodlands and how to manage and reduce those. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosanna. I will just do the death by PowerPoint bit, so hopefully everybody can see that okay, and everybody can hear me okay as well. I can't see you guys, so if there only ends up with being one person left in the chat, please let me know, and I'll throw some gags in or something like that. So there's a few things I wanted to talk about today, if that's all right. So firstly, my name is Mike Appleton, and I've got 2 roles at Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust. I'm a plastic-free woodlands officer, which is going to move into more of a woodland management role, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. And also I'm the Trust's grants officer as well. So I've been working pretty much full-time in woodlands and grants probably for the last kind of 9 months, and running the plastic-free woodlands programme at the Trust for the last 3 years. I'm a journalist by trade, so I realise that I always say this when I do something like this. I realise that there's obviously a lot more people, a hell of a lot more people more experienced in woodlands than I am, and perhaps I come at it from a slightly different angle. So I'm going to talk about, I just made some really quick notes here, but I'm going to talk about kind of who YDMT are, what do we do. I do a little bit on our plastic-free woodlands programme, some kind of hints and tips when managing plastic in woodlands. I'll also talk about our new small woodlands programme for woodlands under 3 hectares, and hopefully if anybody on the calls in the Yorkshire Dales and surrounding areas, I can tap you up to come and help. And then I'll just mention the Forestry Plastics Working Group and who we are and what we've been doing over the past few years. So hopefully I can get this working. So for those of you who don't know, I know that Rosanna was saying that Northwoods is mainly kind of northeast, but that's where we are in that rather rubbish map of the country. So we're based in Clapham in the Yorkshire Dales, and that's the view from the office pretty much every day. We're in a kind of what you class as an idyllic village in the south of the national park. There's a farm next door. Our office is used to be it was a pub at one point and was an old post office as well. So we're kind of get to see kind of country life on and off whenever in the office. I do apologize if you can hear my kids downstairs. They're 7 and 5, and I did say to them that I was doing this for next hour, and if they could be quiet, that would be really useful, but obviously they're not going to. So we've been around since 1997 as a charity, and we came out of the national park to take advantage of lottery Millennium Commission lottery funding, and we've always been a grant giving body. And that's what we were set up to do. We were there to help people, landscape and wildlife with the Dales and surrounding areas around about the time of the new millennium, and help people do things in their communities that make a significant difference. We're only supposed to be around for 5 years, and we're now celebrating our 25th anniversary. We planted nearly 1.6 million trees. We bring people from urban areas into the Dales for respite, including refugees and asylum seekers. We help young people and those most vulnerable. We give young people the opportunity to work in the Dales through apprenticeships as well. That's really important. We want to encourage people to be able to live and work in the Dales, so you don't get that brain drain of people disappearing off into other areas. We support community groups and landowners to renovate and restore their meadows as well, and create pollinator patches. And as I said before, we are also a big grant giver, and over the last kind of 6-7 years we've handed out around about £3 million worth of funding to small groups and organisations, and the grant programme that I look after at the moment has a budget of around about £600,000 and includes Woodlands as well. So quite an eclectic charity. We do also a whole lot of other stuff like community land trusts and things like that, but for the purposes of today, we'll crack on. Our woodland strategy is based around kind of 3 separate areas. One is the actual kind of doing and helping landowners plant their woodlands, as you can see in the top bit of the slide there. And there are targets for the next 3 years. We then bring communities together to help us do that kind of first point as well. Empower local communities to create and care for woodlands. We've got tree nurseries which we're establishing with 6 different communities. We bring people into the Dales to help us plant trees and maintain woodlands, and we're also, as I say, we help woodland trainees, basically decide what if they want to work in woodlands and they want to kind of progress in the sector. We're hosting woodland trainees, and one of our woodland trainees has just become an apprentice. I don't know the exact term, but she might be on the call. An apprentice with the Forestry Commission, which I think is a 3-year funded programme, which also includes a degree as well. And then there's the stuff that I'm going to talk about today. Really, it's our use of plastic in woodlands, and also woodland management as well. Just to give you an idea of the sort of things that we did last year. So there's some nice stats there and some horrible chews, but you can kind of see the sort of things that we're helping to plant. There's obviously a lot of mechanisms for funding for woodland creation out there at the moment with UCO. There's more woods that White Rose Forest are doing, and we work with those partners to help deliver tree planting across the region. We don't offer kind of maintenance payments or anything like that with our planting. Because we're a charity, we need to make sure that our kind of money goes as far as we can for all the other things I've spoken about a little bit earlier. But landowners come to us because, well, a couple of things really. Firstly, they like to be involved in what the charity does, so they believe in our purpose and our vision. They like the fact that we can bring groups out to help maintain their woodlands as well going forward. So there's a bit of a kind of partnership approach there. We probably don't get involved in kind of checking the woodlands as much as we should do, which is something I'm going to come on to in a bit as well. And I guess our process of applying is a lot easier than kind of using a UCO application or anything like that. So, but what we will do, we're an independent charity. Our vision is to plant as many trees as possible. So we will signpost any landowner to the other forms of funding around as well, which I always find a bit weird because if you work for Tesco, you don't tell people to go to Asda, but it's important that we deliver the best we can for landowners. Another kind of rubbish map of the sort of things, the sort of area that we cover and the sort of things we're doing this year is probably another 10 or 20 little projects to add on there. The green ones are landscape, different types of landscape projects that I'm administering through our grants program. And the other kind of, well, I think it's kind of a yellow is our woodland program. As I said before, we bring groups out, which is something it's nice to do. It's always where landowners can be a little bit wary when you suggest that you're going to bring some kids out or a different type of group out onto their land to help plant. But it is good fun, and a landowner said to me, a farmer said to me a long time ago, is how can people understand what we do in the Yorkshire Dales if we don't bring people out and to show them what we do, and also how can we encourage people to think about landscapes, think about probably the large scale land use changes that probably have to occur because of lack of subsidy and obviously climate change. How can we, tell urban people, urban groups and people what's happening in the countryside if we don't actually show them what's happening and actually encourage that kind of love and nature for love and nurture for nature. I'd say plenty of different types of groups who come out and help me clean various woodlands of plastic. The top three there at Merk Pot, which is near Snaysholm, the Red Squirrel Reserve, and others kind of various points around the region as well. And some more lovely pictures. The guys at the bottom right, that was one of the wettest days I've ever been on. But not everything goes to plan. As you can see there, we had a corporate group out with us not so long ago, and the chap decided to drive his car down a lane near our woodland, got himself stuck in a ditch, then managed to flip his car around and set fire to it. Such is, it's not something you can usually work out on a risk assessment. But what I would advise is never try and put a fire out in a car using screen wash, as this guy did. And quite disappointingly, cars don't explode like they do in movies as well. So whilst I was doing my tree planting talk to a group of 25 people just up the lane, you could tell that they were just waiting for that kind of big bang and that big pop, but it doesn't happen, disappointingly. So narcissistic picture at the top there. What are plastic-free woodlands? So this is a program that the trust set up 3 years ago. So I've put animations here, but I'll just click them all on so you can read them. It's based around three facets really, and that is to remove redundant tree tubes from the dales, to trial alternatives into plastic use and feed into the National Forest Research Trial, and to create a bit of a systems change in forestry and woodland creation across all sectors. And we've been lucky that we've been funded well, firstly, obviously by the charity's own reserves and the charity's own donors, but we've also received funding from European Outdoor Conservation Association to set up the project. We've had some funding from the FC to help us do the Forest Plastics Working Group part of the project, and People's Postcode Lottery are the charity's kind of main funder, and they've backed the project all along. And we've achieved some good stuff. I'm going to blow my own trumpet here, but it's phenomenal. I think what we've achieved in the past 3 years. So nearly 250,000 shelters from our YDMT-led collection hubs. They also include hubs that we've helped set up with the National Trust in Keswick and Devon as well. We've brought volunteers out to remove shelters. We've planted a lot of trees at 10 different trial sites, and we've helped to set up the Forest Plastic Working Group. I always look at that figure at the top there, which talks about the collections. We will hit 250,000 probably early next year, but YDMT have planted 1.6 million trees, and the vast majority of those will have tree shelters on. So, yeah, it's a big job. And then if you scale that up with what's happening in the country, and I've heard a stat of between 15 million and 24 million shelters still being used per year in woodland creation, you can see that whilst we've shown that it is possible to recycle plastic, unless we actually start to reduce the use of shelters, then we're always going to be chasing our tail. The work is based around the waste hierarchy. So if you're a woodland manager, a woodland owner, and you're looking at restocking, you're looking at kind of putting trees into your woodland, we would always say, look at the waste hierarchy. Can you prevent the use of plastic? Can you reduce it? Are you able to reuse? That's a difficult one in forestry and woodland creation, because if you take in, well, if you're taking plastics from one woodland to another, you do run a kind of biosecurity risk. So there are kind of issues around that. And if you actually look at recycling, that's quite a fair way down the pecking order. And circular economy is important as well. We've put a lot of plastic out in our woodlands since we were founded in 1997. And we've now got a system where we know we can recover that plastic. We know it is then going to be reused in new tree shelters, which isn't ideal, of course, because you want to kind of reduce reduce the use of plastic, but you are ensured that there is a kind of circular economy to those products. Incidentally, the kind of bio alternative products, so any kind of product that's kind of cardboard or a bioplastic or anything like that, inherently, whilst they may look better for the environment, because you're not putting plastic out, and therefore you don't have the issues around kind of microplastics and things like that. Then it doesn't encourage a circular economy. You're effectively manufacturing something to waste. I thought I'd put a bit of a case study up there of where we've been. So this is quite a significant woodland. It's 146 hectares up at Howgillside in Beamsley, which is just outside Skipton. We've planted around about 30 hectares of woodland there with the landowner. And around about 40,000 broadleaf trees have been planted there in the last kind of 14 years. I haven't got time to go into, but in 2008 we planted around about 13,500 trees there with plastic shelters, and the total cost of the project was around about £36,000. Be interesting to know how much that would be now. And you can see from the picture at the bottom, the landowner wasn't particularly happy because his birch woodland kind of did that wavy effect and kinked when it came out of the tubes, and as he says, all he's got is firewood. And he became quite evangelical about plastic use because of that kind of what happened to his birch woodland. So he said he had an extra 1,000 trees left, and he asked us, and I think it was the FC who was involved in the project as well, whether he could plant without using plastic, and it's worked. It's pretty fascinating sight with kind of how well it's gone. And unfortunately, I wasn't going to play the video, but you can't, he has encouraged natural regeneration. His site, he doesn't use plastic, and you can't walk through this part of its woodland. It's that dense. So he has shown that he can create a woodland, and he can encourage natural regeneration without the use of plastic. Okay, he has shot everything within a probably a 2-mile radius of his site. He's kept on top of browsing. He's kept on top of rabbits. He does have an issue with voles, so our latest planting we have used vole guards there, but that is a reduced plastic initiative. We use vole guards as compared to kind of 0.6 or 1.2 meter shelters. So there is a way of doing this, but obviously he's kept on top of his browsing. I've written a case study on this on the Forestry Plastics Working Group website, so I do encourage you to go and have a look at kind of the work we've done there and what the landowner did. So as I said when I started the chat, I'm by trade a journalist, so I like asking questions. So I thought that if I walked into a woodland and I kind of saw the use of plastic and saw how we could manage that use and what would happen in the future, I would ask myself these questions really. So firstly, what plastic do you have in your woodland? Have you mapped it? That might seem a little bit trite if you've just got a kind of a 1 hectare woodland. You're going to go to all the bother of kind of mapping what bits of plastic are here and there, but I know that the kind of My Forest mapping software kind of allows you to kind of pinpoint right into your particular compartments. So it might be worth, if you've got a bigger woodland, to actually map, when you're looking at woodland management, actually mapping the areas of plastic, and even putting kind of when that area was planted, just so you've got an idea of when you get to kind of 5, 7, 10 years that you need to be looking at the shelters that you used, and are they ready to come off. Simply, can your plastic be removed without further damaging the tree? That is always an interesting one, because if you take your shelter off too early, you can encourage browsers to rub against that tree. And I think I've put just a couple of bits in there that oak, hares, and rabbits absolutely love trees that have just come out of shelters. Willow can be damaged easy as well. And I always thought holly was quite safe from browsing once you took up a shrub shelter off, but apparently hares and rabbits really like it. So, you know, if in doubt, I think you can leave a shelter on for another year. I always go on the fact that the trunk should be the size of a Coke can before it is removed, or if you can control browsing. Just up the road, well, I'm based in St Helens, but just up in the road from our office in Clapham, I know at Broughton Hall, there's a huge woodland creation scheme there, and they're actually starting to take the plastic off already after pretty much 3 to 4 years, because the trees have done so well. They're getting a bit of girth in the stem as well, and more importantly, they can actually control the browsing as well. And if in doubt, leave it another year, unless the actual tube itself is splitting. And then you run into that issue of kind of microplastic pollution, especially if you've got watercourse coming through your area as well. I don't think there's any kind of danger on leaving it another year. But I would say, don't leave it too late. This is one site that I've been working at quite recently. And there's two shelters there, about 255 million stakes. You know, that has gone beyond the time that shelter should have been removed. And those shelters, those kind of, I think they were called acorn shelters, are the biggest pain in the backside to remove. You know, they are designed to stay with the tree long as possible. So, you know, whilst you say, I'm saying that you can, if in doubt, leave it on another year if you're not sure about the browsing pressure on your woodland. You know, don't let it get to this. Otherwise, when I turn up with a group to help remove the shelters, I might have a bit of a grumble at you. So other things to consider, and I'll flick these on as well. You know, at the moment, Forestry Commission don't stipulate what protection you need to use when you're doing kind of restock or a woodland creation or anything like that. But obviously, it's important to tailor your method of protection to what is actually happening on your woodland. I'm still fighting internally at YDMT, because we automatically think of plastic shelters as soon as we are creating woodlands. And it's a difficult mindset to get out of if that's what we've already done for the past 20 odd years. But we didn't do this 50 years ago. So you know, do you need protection? Is there other ways of getting around having to use plastic? Since 2014, Forestry Commission grants say that you must recover, or they factor in costs for recovery of plastic as well. And I know that I think there are FC people on the call today. I know you guys are absolutely kind of rammed out, especially the woodland officers I know, and don't get a chance to kind of go back to the older schemes that they've helped to create. But at some point, you know, I think if you're a woodland owner, you should be expecting a visit from a woodland officer to actually see if you're bringing this stuff in. And especially with the UCO scheme as well, with the 15-year maintenance agreements, I personally think that the FC are going to be checking up on woodlands in the next kind of 10 to 15 years. So it is worth looking at if you've got a waste management plan in place, you know, even if it's just a piece of paper to say after 5, 7, 10 years, this is what you're going to do with your plastic or with anything that you used in the woodland. It's worth having a waste management plan. And there's also regulations around temporary storage of waste as well. So if you're leaving, if you're actually pulling shelters off and kind of storing them, you know, out of bags in your woodlands, you could fall foul of temporary storage of waste regulations as well. So it's always worth considering a waste management plan and how you're going to remove these shelters. And then some of the things I'll talk about in a minute, you know, for me, I'd like to know, is it easy to get a group there to help you remove your shelters? Are you able to take your dumpy sacks to the roadside? And are you close to a collection hub as well? We're talking about collection hubs. When we started the project, we looked at how easy it is for a landowner who's got plastic shelters on their woodland to actually get those recycled. and it was very, very difficult. There's various schemes around, and like Farm Excess did a scheme, and a kind of Solway Recycling have got a scheme, but there didn't seem to be an easy way of having the tubes on your site taken away for recycling, and where you would know kind of what happened to that plastic as well. And I'm not saying that Solway and the Farm Excess don't know what's happened to the plastic. That's kind of two separate points there before they come after me. So I looked a way of kind of, do we have a central collection point where farmers and landowners could bring their tubes to us, or could we have them collected from the farm gate? Tubex did have a farm gate collection system at the time, but it was around about £75 a bag. And I think in some cases that could almost go up to £96 a bag. So if you consider you've got 400 shelters that you could possibly fit in a bag at £96 a sack or £75 a sack, that's a lot of money for the average upland Dales farmer who I deal with. So we set up collection hubs at Craven Auction Mart and Apposite, just to see how easy it would be at the beginning of the project. And about 60,000 tubes dropped off over 12 days. You know, that's obviously a lot of tubes and a lot of manpower. There was no kind of environmental legislation around the removal of tubes and taking them to a central collection point and actually hosting those tubes there as well. So we had to work with the EA to actually make sure that everybody involved in that process didn't fall foul of a waste regulation if they flipped the trailer on the A65 or whatever. And understandably, we wanted to make it free, easy to use and accessible as well. You know, we've helped to create a lot of woodlands in our time at YDMT, and we didn't want that cost to be passed on to the landowner if possible. So we tried to make it free, and all it would cost effectively would be, you know, half a tank of diesel to get the tubes to a particular site, and then the charity would pick up that cost. And we've got 17 hubs now. I think there's 17 there. So it has grown from just having a couple of hubs in the Dales to actually see if it would work, to having 17 hubs across the country. We're hoping that will increase to around about 2021 next year. They operate during the off season of tree planting, so probably from May round about to October. And the important thing is that they are free to use. All we ask is that somebody books in with us, so we know, so we can kind of manage the logistics and the flow of the shelters coming in onto those sites as well. So we've shown that we can help landowners manage the plastic, remove it from site, and get it to a collection hub as well. So we kind of close that loop there. And what happens is we can collect around about 48 bags worth of material at a collection hub, and you get them on Arctic, and they disappear off down to Aberdare at Tubex, and they effectively recycle them into new tree shelters. Last year, the scheme all across England and Wales collected around about 30 tons of plastic. Around about 27 tons of that was usable in new tree shelters, and then that was kind of repurposed into around about 23 tons of proper usable recycled plastic. One of the issues we've got is that all sorts appears in the bags, and we're just trying to find a way of managing that a little bit better. So any type of PP plastic shelter can be recycled, but unfortunately with this recycling hub we can't recycle PVC spirals, but I'll come on to that in a minute. And the idea is to get as much recycled content into tree tubes going forward. So I guess this is a little bit of a sales pitch for Tubex, which is not my intention, but they want to get to 100% recycled content in their shelters. But to hit a circular economy, I needed to be sure that when we partnered with Tubex, I knew what was happening to the plastic. When we started the project, there was all sorts of stories on Panorama of plastic bottles appearing in kind of China and overseas that had come from the British market. So I just wanted to know where our plastic was going, and this seemed the safest way, of ensuring that the plastic was being used in a kind of closed loop. So it's a little bit of neck oil, apologies. There's obviously a lot of talk at the moment around alternative tree shelters. I'm not daft. I understand that woodland owners and planters, the market is pointing towards an alternative tree shelter. We're told, David Attenborough is telling us all the time about kind of plastic appearing in our seas and effectively ending up inside us, and although we know that a plastic tree shelter, it can be used in a kind of a circular economy way. The sector does seem to be pointing towards a alternative shelter as a product that might be useful. So we've been trialing various alternative products over the last 3 years, but I think I just want to pop up these kind of 3 points really. The first two are from the UK FS, which has just been launched this year. So even if you use a plastic tree guard, cotton, sheep's wool, whatever, the UK FS, whilst it isn't legally binding, of course, is saying that these items need to be removed and recycled to avoid the impacts of bioaccumulation in the forest soil. And obviously, there's a lot of research going into these alternative products at the moment, and kind of what happens when they biodegrade as well. But for small woodland owners in particular, there's a few things there that I would consider before using a plastic tree shelter, which you can kind of read at your own leisure. There's two things on the left and right there which I think are worth looking at. On the left, there's a product called Trico or Trico, and it's a rendered sheep fat. Which you spray onto each individual stem probably twice a year, and it basically repels deer from coming having a mooch into your woodland. I've seen this on a few trial sites. I've not actually used it myself yet, and it does seem to work. We're some really interesting results. A couple of landowners that I work with have used it as a around the perimeter of a woodland, and that seems to work up to a point when the deer realise that, hang on, if we just jump over where it's sprayed, we get nature's buffet. So, but spraying it onto the actual stems seems to do the trick. If anybody's used it and would like to kind of pass on some kind of details of how they've used it and the sort of results they're getting, I'd be really interested. All I'm told is that it seems to be working well, but it does stink your woodland out, and I think you've got to burn your clothes afterwards. It's a pretty rank stuff, and you also need to be you need to have kind of particular spraying certificates to use it as well. On the right hand side is, I guess, a different type of Trico. It's actually taping or gluing sheep's wool onto stems, and that seems to do the trick as well. I've tried that on a couple of woodlands that I've planted, but realistically, you can only really do that for 50 to 100 stems before you get bored, really. And whilst it might work on some really small areas, it's never going to be applicable, I don't think, to kind of 10, 20, 30,000 stem woodland. But it shows that deer and sheep don't seem to like each other. So just a quick kind of update on some of the trials that we've been doing. I think it's probably fair to say we've only been running our trials for around about 3 years now, and the survival rate of the guards really depends on the type of guard and the location. The products that we've been trialing over the last 3 years are early versions of products as well. So there's in that picture there is an earthboard guard made by a company called Saran, who also do kind of paper packaging in smoked salmon, and they kind of repurposed that into a guard. And that's probably their version 3, but I know they're on version kind of 5 or 6 now. So any trial that's been taken at the moment always has that kind of premise on it, really, that you're using kind of an older version of a product. And it's the same with the forest research trial that's going on at the moment as well. Obviously, they're using older products. Current research, this was a UCL life cycle study, was looking at kind of carbon capture and carbon sequestration, and they actually found beyond kind of bare planting and planting with just fencing, actually found that plastic is best in terms of carbon sequestration when you add up kind of what the tree takes in and the kind of manufacture of the products and things like that. They found that that was best for carbon sequestration as long as it's recycled. The problem is we know that these things are not being recycled as much as they should do, and there's also concerns over kind of bioplastics, what they are, and do they degrade as well. There's a lot of research currently being undertaken with that. So I'll just keep talking. You can see the kind of various guards that we've used. So there's the next gen version 1 up in the top left. Various different types of guards. Quite a lot of cardboard guards in. Well, that one in the bottom middle was a kind of a green tech guard, which is really a hedging guard. It was only supposed to survive probably around about 6 months. But on some sites is still there. That's BMP's cotton guard on the left there, and then on the right it's a High-Tech's guard, which I think is made out of sugar cane, but don't hold me to that. And we try and grow with different types of kind of planting scenario really. So in the 10 trial sites, I wanted to ensure that every planting scenario that I would have in the Yorkshire Dales and surrounding areas was covered. So whether that be kind of riparian, exposed upland, that one on the left there is actually in a very, very heavily browsed allotment in Bentham. And when I say heavily browsed, I mean that rabbits have it away with all the vegetables all the time. My kids would love it because it's Peter Rabbit, but so it's quite interesting to see what's happened to those guards and the kind of level of browsing there. Not everything has gone well, but like I say, I do kind of precede this with the fact that these are kind of older products. So the top left is a very, very early Tubex Nature tube, and the deer just loved eating the top of it, which is bizarre. There's a couple of cardboard ones didn't quite go according to plan. They split quite early. And these are taken quite recently as well. So after 3 years, the next gen guard, one of their early versions, has split and has started to degrade, which is really what they wanted it to do. I think we've got to remember these alternative shelters are not designed to last the same length as plastic. So I, kind of half of me was thinking I would have loved that guard in the left to stay on that tree for another 2 or 3 years, but the material is doing what it's supposed to do. Not all trials go according to plan. So this was a site that should have been fenced in time. It wasn't, and those little buggers had an absolute field day with headbutting all the alternative guards in particular. So I did put that in my last report. And then if your fencing's not good, you end up with quite significant woolly beasts in your woodland as well. And it doesn't really matter what shelter you've got there once those guys are in. Whilst they might not eat the trees, they certainly like to trample and rub as well. So just is my kind of view from the Dales. I hope I'm all right for time, Rosanna and Martha. So our trials have been running since January 2021. I don't think there's an alternative for a plastic tree guard in the uplands just yet. I found that spirals and bioplastic shelters were useful on most sites if they're looked after. And what I mean by looking after is just ensuring that you walk your woodland, and you should be doing this even with plastic tree shelters anyway. Walk your woodland at least once every couple of weeks, and with a lump hammer, just to make sure that everything's kind of upright and where it should be. Life of cardboard products depends on the site and weather conditions. That's not going to get me a Nobel Peace Prize for that comment, but it's probably quite obvious. One of the cardboard guards now, the manufacturer is saying it should last up to 5 years, which is ideal for a hedging guard in my view. If the site is greys, it needs fencing, whatever, which you just seen in the last picture. And I think that you'll need to use some type of protection on an upland site unless it's completely browser secure, and that's including vole guards. So when you class voles as browsers, but but yeah, especially the upland sites I work at, voles are a real pest. So we tried kind of raptor perches and things like that. So there's always a way of trying something different. And then just some of the comments that people make to me, really, yeah, on the flip side, if you don't use plastic and you've got a kind of high browser population, it means you've got to de-fence your woodland. And some members of the public, when I've been planting, said that they don't want their areas of the Dales de-fenced. It can look like a prison camp. So that's an obvious conversation we need to have. Bioplastics, are they what they say they are? I know that soil-based tests that might say a particular product degrades whilst it's in the soil after 2 years. That doesn't equate to total degradation. So are some of the, and this is just me talking, are some of the biodegradable alternatives, are we still going to see them in our woodlands after 6, 7, 10 years possibly? Where the product itself hasn't gone into the soil, so the microbes can actively act on the material. I think there's a concern of cost for recovery of all types of plastic. I've got one contractor who's telling me that he would charge £4 per tube to collect on his most inaccessible site. And if you think that this chap's using helicopters to drop shelters off in some of the upland areas, you can see why it could be £4. So in some woodlands, you've already got a significant financial legacy. Going forward, kind of in 5, 7, 10 years time, you could be hit with a bill for probably not for £4, but let's say for £3 per shelter to remove, unless you obviously talk to me and I do that for you. But the tide is changing. Woodland Trust survey of 300,000 members. Plastic use was highest on their agenda, and they obviously stated that they were going to go plastic free on their own estate as well. And I think if you're going to use a particular shelter or alternatives, firstly, please look at Forestry Plastic Working Group website, and there's various bits of guidance there where you can actually make an informed decision. And the group is producing material all the time. And just consider the future if you use plastic. Not every landowner can call on 200 volunteers to help them remove bits of woodland. Really quickly, we've got a new small woodland management programme which starts in April next year. So all this work will become part of kind of woodland maintenance, woodland management. And the idea is that we will provide support to landowners who have woodlands or total woodland under 3 hectares, which obviously there's no supplement for creating a woodland management plan for woodland under 3 hectares. So we will help landowners in the Dales and surrounding areas do that free of charge. That will help, firstly, you'll know what you've got and know how to, provide some advice on how to manage your smaller woodland. It prepares for any change in FC grant funding, because you never know in kind of 5, 10 years that the FC might provide grant funding for smaller woodlands. And ironically, the average new UCO scheme is under 3 hectares as well. So that's our plan. So this is how we'll do it. So, have a chat with landowners, map the site. We will return, look at compartment analysis, draft a maintenance plan, present the plan to the landowner, and then we'll have a YDMT grant fund, which will enable you to match fund some of the work that you'd like to do in your woodlands. So, and it's a mixture of woodlands as well. Some of you might recognise the chap on the left. That's Simon Place from High Grains Forestry, who's kind of helping me with this project. We're looking at really woodlands over 10 years old, a mix of kind of semi-ancient as well, just different types of woodlands in the Dales to bring these woodlands into better management, which is obviously better for biodiversity. I found some really good stuff already. Excuse me. So that's an ash tree on the left there, over in Nidderdale, which is doing phenomenally well. So I contacted the Future Trees Trust about that one as well. So some woodland owners will have absolute gems in their woodlands that we might be able to spot and help you with, and also look at how to perhaps you manage your woodland for timber as well, so you get the kind of stands that you want. We can identify or use the expertise that Simon has to actually identify trees that might be good for timber in kind of 50 to 100 years, generations of your family. So I don't know what time it is, but I just thought I'd kind of introduce the Forest Plastics Working Group and who we are and what we do. We were set up around about 4 years ago, just before the first Plastic Tree Guards Do We Need Them conference that was held in Leeds in 2019. It was predominantly a kind of a very kind of northern centric group of people that met from the FC, Till Hill, Yorkshire Dales National Park and YDMT. But following that conference, we realised that there's a lot of expertise in woodland creation in the country, and also including Ireland as well. And bring all these people together to actually be able to help people look at the issue of plastics in woodland creation, and if there was an alternative. And pretty much in 2019, when we did that conference, we thought plastic was on its way out, and we needed an alternative guard. But I think the trials are showing at the moment there's still a lot of questions around that. So we've got three main aims of the group. There's a good practice around the use of plastic in forestry, research and share information on alternatives, and that kind of wordy kind of reuse and recovery of plastics in woodlands and amenity planting. It's not just a group of kind of zealoted anti-plastic people. We brought together everybody who has a kind of a real kind of stakeholder interest in creating woodlands in this country. So it includes DEFRA, obviously the FC, Forestry Commission, Forestry England, COM4, UK National Parks. We're going to have the AOMBs on National Landscapes, as they're called, coming on soon. There's Cheviot Trees kind of representing the kind of nursery sector as well. So it's not a closed shop. It is really everybody who kind of has a say or is creating woodlands to come together and kind of share best practice on the use of plastic in woodlands. And we've done some pretty amazing stuff, I think, so far. So, we funded the independent tree shelter trial at Forest Research. Emily Fensom, who I think is on the call, I noticed her name before I started talking, did a presentation on early findings of that trial at our conference in 2022, and you can see that on our website as well. We produced case studies which looks at plastic reduction from kind of hobbyists, woodland creation, all the way up to what's happening up at Mar Lodge and the deer control, to Till Hill site at Jarrow, which is a big commercial woodland as well. So we're trying to go through all stages of woodland creation or forest creation, and just how people can use plastic a little bit differently. And I'm working on a few more of those. So we've got a riparian one coming soon as well. We've recently been up to Wild in Ennerdale and looked at what they were doing with exclosures. Eco field, we take people out on field visits as well, and that's not just the group. Anybody, if you sign up to the mailing list on the website, anybody can join us on a field visit. It's not, I say, it's not a closed shop. We produced the reducing the use of plastic guidance, which is downloadable, or if somebody wants to drop me an email, I'm quite happy to send one in the post. And the Woodland Trust did the life cycle analysis, which I spoke about earlier with UCL. We've still got a few other things coming as well. So we've been looking at plastic sign use within the forestry industry, and what happens to those signs. I'm sure if you've walked through a woodland recently where there has been some harvesting, the signs end up everywhere and they never stay where they're supposed to. So we're looking at, is there alternatives to that? I say we're looking at riparian tree planting, a few more case studies. We're now working on a plastic mapping app where if you're a woodland owner or you're walking in a woodland and you see a plastic guard, you'll be able to just put a pin on a map. And that means that firstly we know where the plastics are in the country, but it means we can target our central collection hubs around real hotspots for plastic use as well, which is great. It's all very well. I'm sat here we looked at that map before and say, no, we could do with a hub in the Midlands, or we could do one on the south coast. But unless we actually know there's a need for it there, and this will help us do that. And yeah, as I say, we're looking at expanding our hubs across England and Wales, probably up to around about 20 with Tubex in the next year or so, and trying to crack Scotland. Scotland have a very different waste legislation system to England, so I'm just looking at how we can make this project fit in with collection hubs in Scotland. But there is a lot to go at, up there. I'm not sure. Yeah, just before I close, I mentioned before about PVC spirals. I thought I'd left a slide in. PVC is actually really easy to recycle. The actual material itself is really easy to recycle, and Rainbow, who have made a lot of the PVC spirals, can recycle it to use as pipe filler and things like that. Once it's recovered, it's really easy to recycle. But as we know, if you use a PVC spiral on a hedge, it is a real pain in the backside to actually collect in. The shards go absolutely anywhere. Most hedges have hawthorn in, so it's not a pleasurable job. However, if you do want to collect your PVC in, I'm trialing a central hub for spirals as well. So Rainbow have a scheme at the moment where they will collect this material for you. I think it's £50 a sack at the moment. I think there's a minimum of like five sacks as well. So there's obviously an economic issue there. But I'm trialing a central hub for that material all year round at Skipton Auction Mart at the moment as well. But the issue with that is it's just really difficult to get in. So I think, personally, I would just not use those spirals at all in hedgerow creation. I think there's a lot of different stuff that we can use out there. We'll just try to come up with a way of where we can easily recycle that material. So I think that's it. I've obviously waffled on for a long time. So hopefully when I stop sharing my screen now, there's still at least a few people who want to ask questions. But if you do want to get in contact with me, or you want to know more about the project and more what YDMT do, please drop me a line. I'm more than happy for anybody who's viewing this today to come out and look at a trial site. If anybody wants to come and collect shelters with me, that would be fantastic. If you've got a woodland in the Dales and Nidderdale where you're ready to take your plastic off, please do let me know, and we might be able to bring a group out as well. And I'm quite happy to signpost you to other members of the Forestry Plastic Working Group who've probably got a better kind of tree planting knowledge than I have as well, if you need any advice. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for that, I think, a really interesting talk, and kind of I felt like we went on a bit of a journey through some of the sites that you've looked at, and then also the research that you're doing, and the different types of plastic tubes or non-plastic tubes, but still tubes available. Does anyone have any questions? We have about 5 minutes or so for questions. You are welcome to put a question in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and we'll invite you to unmute yourself and ask your question. I can't see any questions at the moment. So Mike, in terms of your volunteer groups, how, if you're looking to can people set them up themselves? Is it best to get in touch with yourself? How would you think about starting kind of volunteer groups to go out and pick up plastic tubes?
Yeah, I think we've been lucky, Rosanna, because we were, quite a lot of our funding, whilst we're funded by People's Postcode Lottery and kind of corporate partners and our supporters as well, we've always never really had an issue with getting volunteers out, because our supporters want to get involved with the kind of work we do. Yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch, and I can kind of explain some of the background of the sort of things that you need, the sort of materials that you need to collect shelters in, I'm more than happy to do that. Shelter removal is quite a nice job, I think, especially if I can bring the landowner out as well, because it shows they're seeing the end of the fruits of their endeavour, really. So, and that's something that our volunteers appreciate, as well as if the landowner can actually get involved in those types of schemes. But yeah, I'm more than happy to help anybody who wants to set up a volunteering group. I know Francesca over at the Edwardian Hills, has just done a spiral guard volunteer group as well. So I'll be quite happy to put anybody in contact with her as well, and to find out how they did it, because I know they had fun and games with spirals.
I think the general consensus is to, if anyone has any further questions, to reach out to Mike, and he'll be able to answer them, or to direct you to someone that might be able to support your query a bit further. We still don't have any questions. So, and I was busy listening, so I've not come up with too many myself. But Mike, what's the most frequent question you're asked when people ask you about reducing plastic in your woodlands?
What alternative shelter do I need to use? That is pretty much
That's the big one.
The 100% question. Yeah. Yeah, I'm into. I said before, I'm in two minds really, because I kind of look at it and I think, as a society, have we now got to the point where we just chuck something around a tree and not worry about it for 10 years? And that's what surprised me when I joined I joined the sector, really, coming from the background I had, was, is that what we do now? Is it just kind of, we just throw a tube around and just forget about it? But I do understand that, especially with the farmers I work with, they just haven't got time to be checking their woodlands every, even monthly. As well. So yeah, so an alternative shelter is the big thing as well, and it is just dependent on the site. When I first started the project, after 6 months of trial use, I was convinced that the cardboard shelters were fantastic. I just thought, there's no way, these are brilliant. How has this not gone in the environments that we work in? But then they surprised me, and a month later they disappeared. But yeah, there are some good alternatives. There are some quite exciting alternatives out there, and even though we don't know if they biodegrade at the moment, and there's that kind of circular economy issue, I think it's fair to say that the whole sector is working towards the same thing, isn't it? We all want to plant a tree, and we all want to make sure that tree survives. So I think sometimes, I think we get kind of too stuck in the debate of, should we use this, should we use that? And I think sometimes it might put people off when we just want to plant trees, don't we? Sorry, that's a bit of a waffle answer, but yeah, that's the question I get asked.
I think it's a good point. Everyone, as you say, everyone's united in trying to achieve the same thing: plant more trees, plant more woodlands, for all the benefits they provide. So yeah, how you do that is dependent on your site, what works for you economically, access, all those sorts of things. So yeah, there's no kind of cookie cutter answer for everyone, is there?
Yeah, exactly.
Nicola, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, great, thank you. That was a really interesting. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. Sorry, Nicola.
Yes, that's better.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. That was a really interesting talk. Really keen to follow the research that you're doing on these guards. We've been looking at alternatives to using the plastic guards at South West Lakes Trust, but as you've said, it's really that there isn't a suitable alternative in a lot of instances at the moment. So we're looking to use the plastic Tubex guards and then recycling. It just seems to be the only real alternative that, there isn't really any other suitable alternative at the moment for us. But what we are doing is, where we don't have a deer problem and a rabbit problem, we are going down the no guard route.
Yeah.
And we're just not bowing down to the traditional, you have to use guards because that's what we've done for generations. And also really interested to hear what you were saying about deer don't like sheep, and we've noticed that actually in a lot of the plantations where we're bordered by farmland where there are a lot of sheep, we just don't get the deer coming down. So we are using mulch mats of sheep's fleece around those trees, and that's really helping a lot. So there's all sorts of things, and I did actually read a paper which suggested that in areas where there's low risk of predation by predators of the tree, such as rabbits and deer, it's actually a lot cheaper to buy more whips and plant those, and then pay a little bit more when it comes to beating up. So we've really taken that on board, and our forestry consultants have been amazing, coming on board with those ideas. But unfortunately, there are still some areas where we do have huge numbers of deer and rabbits, and we do have to resort to using plastic tree guards. So we're going to be watching you very closely to find out where you go next with all of this. But it was a really interesting talk, so thank you so much. So really more observations and in our learning, really, to add to what you've said. But yeah, just wanted to add those points. But great talk, thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. We're looking at the sheep fleece mulch mats at the moment as well, with a local farmer who is looking at weaving kind of wildflower seeds into those mats as well. So we're just kind of working with him on basically the provenance of those seeds, really, and because we wouldn't want to introduce something to a Yorkshire Dales woodland that shouldn't be there. So that's quite interesting. I think that, yeah, some of the landowners out, I don't want to kind of tar them over the same brush, but I think when they see a plastic guard put in a woodland, even if it's just a 1 hectare scheme, it's seen as progress. So they know that there's a tree there, and even though they might not walk those trees every week, they know there's a tree there, and it kind of makes them feel a little bit happy. Whereas when you plant bare planted and you're kind of admitting that you might lose a few, I don't know, it gets people's back up sometimes. Some of the owners I work with, it does get the back up. So I'll be interested to see kind of if you got any kind of feedback on the kind of success of those kind of bare planted whips, and just if there's any kind of public perception of that as well. It's a bit bizarre, isn't it? Yeah, when you see a tree guard, people know there's a tree there, and I know that a number of years ago it was seen as kind of progression. But there's a site I work at where they've planted around about 30,000 bare whips, and you can't see the trees, so it's almost like they've not done anything, which is difficult then for their kind of supporters and their funders. And yeah, anyway, I'm wibbling.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's obviously, evolving. People are trialing different things, so we'll just have to keep up with the work that the Plastics Working Group are doing, and continue to share, case studies that Mike mentioned, a few that they're developing currently, but also working, keeping in touch with other people that are trying different approaches as well. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of kind of public learnings, case studies, and that sort of thing coming out. Mike mentioned the Woodland Trust are also trying to go plastic free across our estate. So that'll be interesting to see the results of, or how they're finding that, rather. I think that's us for this evening. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you very much, Mike, for giving up your time this evening to talk us through the work that you're doing with the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust, but also with the Plastic Free Working Group. For those of you that are on the Northwoods mailing list, you should be aware of our other upcoming webinars. We will be sending out a link after this webinar, both asking for your feedback on this one, topics for other ones, and then you can also see the other webinars that we've got scheduled for after Christmas, including diversifying woodland incomes, and also looking at digital technologies to undertake woodland inventories. So we would love you to sign up to another one. We hope you've enjoyed this one. Please do provide any feedback in our feedback form, and good evening.